I walk a straight line, shackled and chained. Oh, gruesome Gertie is calling my name. There is no mercy in this penitentiary. Just ask the Hillstring Gang or Angola 3. I'm here for life, I'm here to die. Inside these walls, inside the wire. And when the wolf cries, I know it's over. Oh, bloody Angola. Oh, bloody Angola.
Hey everyone, and welcome back to Bloody Angola. I'm Jim Chapman, and today I am bringing you another 50 Shades of Evil series episode, and today I'm taking you straight to the Big Apple, New York City, and I'm going to tell you the story of Alex Enriquez, who, after being found guilty in the murder of 3 victims and suspected of many more from 1998 to 1990, he, to this day, denies his infamous reputation as a serial killer. And while the case lacked hard evidence, the circumstantial evidence was overwhelming enough to secure conviction. So let's get into it. And this one is going to start out in 1961 in South Bronx, New York. Now, a quick bit of education on New York City, where the Bronx is located. New York City is a city in New York State, obviously, and in that city there are smaller communities, and these are referred to as boroughs. You may have heard the phrase, the 5 boroughs of New York City. You have Manhattan, Brooklyn, Queens, the Bronx, and Staten Island. And Alex, whose birth name was Alejandro Henriquez, was from the South Bronx in what's known as the Hunts Point section. And in 1961, when he was born, this borough of New York City, it was going through a lot of change, especially demographically. More affluent people in New York City started moving out and into more suburban areas of the city, like Manhattan. And the South Bronx at that time would see a massive increase in their Black and Puerto Rican population. Now, Alex would grow up, and much later in life, as most psychopaths do, when he would discuss his upbringing, he would paint it as this big success. He would even say later on that he went to the best schools in the area and that he was this hugely successful business owner, when in reality, he was a high school dropout, and by adulthood, he would be known as a liar, a deceiver, a fraudster, and this is primarily accusations levied by a large amount of girlfriends who would come forward later on in life and claim he would build himself up to be someone he simply was not, had a very high opinion of himself. Let's just say that. So in the early 1980s, he meets a woman by the name of Andrea Rosario, and that would become a very long-term relationship for Alex. Now, eventually in 1989, they would get married. However, prior to his arrest in 1990, it was discovered that the marriage, it wasn't even legal, because he was married to another woman at the time that he finally married Andrea. So this would start a long road for Andrea, in which she would discover that Alex, really since they met, he had an entire life that she knew nothing about, and a whole other side to himself. So we're going to back up again and go back to the early 80s. And at this point, Alex is in his very early 20s, and he buys a town car that looked very similar at the time to the police cars that detectives, undercover cops in New York would use. And he would tell teenagers, primarily in the neighborhood, that he was an undercover NYPD detective. Now, he would allow them to play in the vehicle, hang out in the vehicle. He would talk to these teenagers all day long, and we'll get into a lot of why that was later on in his psychological profile. But y'all, at the end of the day, he bought that car because he wanted to start a taxi service. He was essentially a taxi driver, but this would enable him to gain access to these teens as well in a grooming sort of way. He would keep toys in there. He would keep candy in there, things that would attract young people. And he would also buy a lot of these neighborhood teenagers in that area toys and things of that nature. Classic grooming techniques, to be sure, but at this point in the early 80s, no one knew really what grooming was. So he would come off as this nice guy, just spending time with the youth of the neighborhood, right? Other parents and adults would actually think, oh, what a cool guy to take time out to talk to kids, not knowing who this guy was in real life. Honestly, in Alex's case, he hit it really well. He didn't look like a pedophile. These days, we know that pedophiles don't have a look, but in those days, he was considered a young, attractive guy. And on the outside, you would have thought, because of all the boasting he did, that he had this big, successful business. And eventually, he would even purchase a fake badge and start defrauding the women he would date. He would even tell them that he was a secret detective, right, for the NYPD. He would steal their credit card information, etc. He was just a total fraud. This guy that claimed to be someone he was not, to the point that he started believing it himself. So it was not long into the 80s. As a matter of fact, 1983, when he is charged with molesting one of his side girlfriend's 5-year-old daughters. 5 years old. Now, there's very limited public information available due to the fact that this victim was just 5 years old. And all we really know in that case is that he was charged with it. No conviction ever occurred, and we don't really know why. There's nothing out there on it. Now, things get quiet for Alex, or seemingly so, and I'm going to take you all the way to July 3rd of 1998. And a young 14-year-old girl by the name of Shamira Bello goes missing in the South Bronx. She's discovered the next day at a park in the South Bronx near a police firing range. She was found to have been beaten, and she also had a lot of trauma involved, especially around the head area. Now, in these days, DNA was pretty much non-existent. Police, they really didn't have anything to go off of. One day, this young lady, 14 years old, goes missing. The next day, her body's found. There were no Ring cameras back then. This was still, 20 years before they were even invented. They didn't have plate readers back then. Hardly anybody. You had to be a business with a lot of money to even have surveillance cameras. So due to all of this, and the fact that, sadly, that park was a common place where they would find bodies over the years, they just kind of chalked this up to an isolated incident. They would work it, but they didn't think this was going to become what it eventually would become. So while they collected DNA and they preserved it in the event they could use it later, they did actually find a hair sample on the body of Shamira Bello. At the time, it really didn't provide any evidentiary value, although later on it would. So let's go to June 14th. Of 1990. A 21-year-old by the name of Lisa Ann Rodriguez goes missing. Now, in late June, police find her body, and it is badly decomposed. It was dumped along a highway in the Bronx, and it's like a parkway, really. It's the I don't want to say the entrance to a park, but it's a highway that exists within a park. And she was so decomposed that even determining a cause of death proved pretty difficult. But police and pathologists, they would later determine she was suffocated, strangled, which was the cause of her death. Again, no leads, really, just seemingly disappeared. Now, like the first body, you do have suffocation as a manner of death, and in both cases, there were no efforts to conceal the bodies, but police didn't really piece that together at the time. They just didn't have enough to go on, and these cases were far enough away from each other, nearly a year, that they didn't really link these two cases by any means, just seemed like another body. So let's go to October 10th. Of 1990, and I'm going to tell you about a 10-year-old by the name of Jessica Guzman. She goes missing. Now, that day she had left her home to go buy bread for her mother from the local supermarket, and she never returned. Now, she was the youngest daughter of a very close-knit family in the South Bronx area, and by 7 p.m. that day, her parents, in a state of absolute panic, as you can imagine, they call police. They report her missing, and they let police know the circumstances that surrounded it. Now, this girl, being just 10 years old, it becomes big news very quickly, and as you can imagine, everyone joins in the search for this young girl. The entire Bronx Police Department, police from all over, volunteers, neighborhood people, even national news reporters were reporting on this all over the country. Then, sadly, just 7 days later, 3 days prior to her 11th birthday, the body of Jessica Guzman was found when a park employee along the Bronx River Parkway spots her body amongst a clump of bushes. She was found stuffed in a black garbage bag, and she was wearing the exact same clothing that she did when she vanished. Once again, the cause of death was determined to be asphyxiation. So it's at this point in time when police, they really start connecting the dots. They discover that in all three cases I just told you about, the victim profiles matched. All three victims were young Hispanic females. The bodies were all dumped in isolated parks along highways, and strangulation was the manner of death with all three of these victims. So with this, the police determined quickly they likely have a serial killer on their hands, and they form a large task force, 40 people. Now, especially in this case, Alex was around a lot. He would actually help in two of these three searches. And during him assisting to find these victims, he would ask police quite often during the search about the investigations. Not in a curious way, though, almost in a prying way, like he was trying to gather information, and police would pick up on this, especially in the 10-year-old's disappearance. So much so that police start looking into the background of Alex Henriquez, and they would discover, and they were shocked when they discovered, that Alex actually personally knew all three of these victims, with Jessica actually having been a close friend of his daughter's. Now, in addition to that, as they dug into his background, they learned he had went on a date once with 21-year-old Lisa Ann Rodriguez. Not only that, they also learned that the 14-year-old Shamira Bello had been one of the young teens who would play in his cab, but he also had once told his nephew he wanted to have sex with her. And they would continue to dig further, and police would discover other incidents involving Alex, including that 1983 charge for molestation that I told you about. And in addition to that, there was also an incident involving his girlfriend Andrea's 3-year-old son, where he scalded the toddler with hot water. He actually pleaded guilty to that in court, and it wasn't an accident. He intentionally scalded a 3-year-old child with hot water. He pleaded guilty to an assault charge in that incident when the boy's father reports him to police. But it was a charge related to a robbery in 1987 that gave police what they needed to actually arrest Alex for something. Police discovered that Alex had an active warrant for his arrest for having committed an armed robbery at what was known as the World Yacht Club in Manhattan, which is where his first wife worked, and actually you could say his current wife, because remember, I told you about him being married to Andrea, but it wasn't really legal because he already had a wife that he never divorced. Well, that was the first wife I speak of here. So on the strength of that old warrant, police arrested Alex Enriquez. Now, at the same time, he had just pleaded guilty in that scalding incident with the 3-year-old I told you about, and the arrest at least put him behind bars while police continued to investigate these murders and really build this case up. Now, Alex knew that police were on to him about these 3 murders. So he commits what I would say is really the most damning evidence against him in the murders by this time. And he came up with a scheme, and he's going to enlist the help of his nephew for this scheme. So he asked his nephew to call police from like a payphone and claimed that it was the killer calling and that he was still on the loose. He even gave his nephew a script he had written out in jail and told his nephew, hey, disguise your voice so they don't know who you are. And get this, really the most damning part to me, Alex gives his nephew some of the details of the murders that police never released to the public. Things like a rip in Jessica Guzman's training bra and the exact color and pattern of her panties. Now, these are things that only the killer would know. Police had never released this to anyone. His nephew smartly records one of these conversations with his uncle, and subsequently he turns that recording over to police. This is in January of 1991. Well, when police heard that, they knew we got our guy here. But they don't quit investigating. They want to build a case, right? So by April of 1991, police do officially name Alex Enriquez as the prime suspect. And in July of 1991, they get an indictment on all 3 murders. Now, evidence they had at this point included fibers matching all 3 victims that they found in a car vacuum at Alex's home. In DNA, it had went through some advancements between the time he was arrested and the time that they actually charged him with these murders by this point in time. And remember that hair that I told you that they found on Shamira Bello's body? Well, they were able at this point to match it to Alex Enriquez through DNA. Also very damning, police were able to determine the sweatpants that Lisa Ann Rodriguez was wearing when her body was found. Those were actually sweatpants that belonged to Alex Enriquez's wife. Just a ton of what you would call really reliable circumstantial evidence there. So, of course, Alex denies everything when police ask him about this. And honestly, the case was harder to prove than you might think beyond a reasonable doubt. It's very circumstantial. There were no eyewitnesses. There were no weapons, no real smoking gun that they could link to Alex, but they had a ton of circumstantial evidence. And in 1992, he gets tried in all 3 cases at the same time. And these were high profile national news type shit, right? On August 28th of 1992, he is found guilty and sentenced to 25 years in prison for each crime for a total of 75 years. Now, at this point, he's in his mid-20s, so he's going to die in prison. He's basically cannot get released, no parole eligibility until he's 100. And at this hearing, families of the victims, they get to finally speak and they issue their victim impact statements to the court. And here is what those sounded like, because I think that those are very important for you to hear.
Your Honor, with the court's permission, I'd like to ask Mr. Rodriguez to address the court.
My wife and I would like to personally thank you for serving as judge in the case of our daughter, Lisa Rodriguez. Since the beginning, when we first heard of you, we learned that you were a fair and stern judge and depicted that very same image in your courtroom. We hold you in the highest esteem. Honorable Sullivan, there are no words that can describe what the murder of our only child, Lisa, has done to our lives. Our daughter has been gone from us for over 2 years now, and at times we still wake up and think that it's only a bad dream. But we wake up to reality and we know different. We go to sleep and wake up asking ourselves why. Why did this person kill our Lisa? What did she ever do to him to deserve this heinous act of violence on her person? She was such a vibrant and vivacious young lady of 21 years. To understand the pain, hurt, and suffering that has engrossed our lives for the past 2 years, you need to know of the relationship we have with our daughter, and there is only one word that can describe it: beautiful. With me, Lisa was not only my daughter, she was my confidant, and most of all, she was my friend. We shared a lot together. I love and miss my daughter very much. The week of June 11th through June 30th of 1990 were the most horrifying weeks of our lives, and they will always haunt us forever. On Sunday, June 17th, Father's Day, I feared that something wrong had befallen my daughter. She did not call or come to be with me like she always did on that special day. I cried myself to sleep. That night and many others, I cried myself to sleep. The void inside of me is so deep, at times I can't bear it. That is why I hate this person so much. He not only killed my daughter, he killed me too. Since the day of my daughter's disappearance, I have seen my wife deteriorate before my eyes. She has gone from a happy and active person to a highly depressed one. On Easter Sunday of this year, my wife visited our daughter's grave site for the first time since we buried her. The next day, she tried to commit suicide. She only wanted to be with her baby, as she would later put it. Honorable Sullivan, our lives will never, ever be the same. We will never experience the happiness of seeing our Lisa married, nor will we ever experience the joy of being grandparents. These are the two most important dreams that will never be, but we will always keep our memories of Lisa alive. Honorable Sullivan, I know you will do what is right according to what the law allows, and we can only pray that God will guide you in your decision. Help us keep Alex Henriquez incarcerated so that he may never be allowed to walk the streets of New York to harm another child again. Respectfully yours, my wife and I.
I would ask that Milagros Guzman, the mother of Jessica Guzman, be allowed to speak to the court.
And my sons, my husband, to give us the opportunity to stand here and express our feelings. It's very hard to express our feelings that we've had for almost 2 years now, and the pain that this has brought us. I have 4 sons, kind of an adopted one that we have adopted. And Jessica was my only daughter, my youngest one also. For me to say what it has done to us is like if Mr. Henriquez has actually also murdered us. There's a part of me inside that died the day I found out that I would never see her again. I don't think that part of me would ever live again. And I think that same part is there within all my family. Jessica was a very happy little girl. We raised her to trust people, to be good, to what was wrong and what was right. Being a parent that had to work. And my husband, I had to teach her from a very young age what was right and what was wrong. I've taught them all to my boys, and I am very proud of my boys, just like I was as proud of her. She knew what was right. She knew what was wrong. She was very friendly, and maybe that was something that maybe was wrong, because that friendship was what killed her. Jessica to me was everything. She was the dream come true after having 4 sons. She was just about to turn 11, and I was thinking of she was going to be now a friend to me. You know, I was going to actually stop being a mom, and now I was going to be also a friend to her. She has started to put on my T-shirts and show me different dances and different things in school. So this was like a very special time for me with her. She would have turned 13 this year in another few weeks. And that would have been the greatest time of my life, to see her turn 13. She was a joy to be with everybody that saw her and spent time with her. Loved her. She was very polite. She was everything to us. I don't have any other daughter. And since this has happened, my husband has had lots of problems expressing his feelings, which is why I am talking. My boys have their also problems with the fact of knowing that somebody could murder their little sister. This will be something that they will live with, and I hope that now that they have seen justice done in this courtroom, that they know that you have to follow the law, that it is wrong to do what's wrong, be against the law. And I thank the court for giving me that back to me. I didn't know how I was going to finish raising them if they saw anything else in this courtroom. I was very scared for them. I was afraid I would end up losing more than just a daughter in this courtroom. But you have granted me that, and I hope you grant us the fact that he will pay for her death and we will never see him again, that he will never hurt any other child again. It's the only thing we have left besides her memory and her pictures and our dreams that we will always have. They might not come true, but our dreams will always be there about her. Thank you.
I mean, just horrific what these people must have went through and are probably still going through. So not only did they get a chance to speak, but just prior to the sentencing, Alex also spoke directly to the judge and, of course, categorically denied any involvement on anything, but the family was not having it even in open court. Listen to this.
First thing I'd like to say is that I am innocent of these killings. I did not commit any of these murders that I was found guilty of. I feel that nothing here has been proven. There's been a lot of lies, a lot of deceptions. If anybody's guilty of a crime in this courtroom, there's this man, Edward Tolty, who sits here for lying and deceiving the people of the Bronx. For lying to the poor families who stood there crying while they read letters of what they believe I did because of what he said. He's paid people to lie. They've come here and lied against me. People that were close to me, that I could never understand why they lied. To this day, I can't imagine why, until I found out the reason why. For the families I'd like to say to Shamira Bello's mother, you didn't take your daughter's life. She was a wonderful person, and all I wanted my nephew was to be with her. And my nephew knows that very well. Never did I hurt Shamira Bello, and I did not take her life. Mr. and Mrs. Rodriguez.
Didn't she get 5 famous things shit all the time?
Mr. and Mrs. Rodriguez.
Pero es un enfermo desgraciado. Mira, cabrona, yo no me voy a desgraciada. No, la sucia, vieja.
Mr. Rodriguez and Mrs. Rodriguez, I like to say that I knew Lisa and I dated Lisa. She was a wonderful person. For Jan Anthony, I hope you find the guts to come forward someday and speak the truth. To tell the court what Mr. Tolte and the police did to him. Lie to him, tell him I was accusing him of the murders and putting fear into him. That if he wouldn't talk for...
Everybody lied with him. He don't fucking lie that time, right? He never lied. He always lied. I knew the fucking asshole. Everybody lies with you, right, Alex? Everybody with you. Everybody. Everybody lied with you, right? Everybody lied with him.
Your Honor,
Go ahead.
something that has not been said was the day in the chambers when we were speaking to the doctor. When we asked the doctor what his opinion was, and he said, and I believe it's on the records, that he said his opinion as a doctor, no person under the influence of any drug or on a methadone should be deliberating in any jury.
Well, it's not quite what he said, but what he did say is recorded fully and is also incorporated again in your lawyer's motion to the court today. You're not quoting him accurately. He didn't say that at all right? But what he did say is a matter of record. Go ahead, what else? Continue.
I feel that a lot of things have been hidden in this trial, and all I've asked, you said from the beginning you would give me a fair trial. And I feel I haven't been given a fair trial. You said you would go by the law. Another thing that's been hidden is juror number 11 approached my family 3 times. Something that was told to my lawyer told my family stay away from him. And he asked to make a deal with my family. Your Honor, I'm innocent of these murders. I have no anger to the families for what they're saying or what they think of me because they have been misled and they have been deceived by Mr. Tolte. I'm innocent of these crimes. Thank you, Your Honor.
The advisory panel and myself absolutely unanimous in what we felt would be a fair sentence. I've never had that experience before, but we're all in accord with respect to the sentence that the law requires be meted out in this particular situation. And all sentences will be for your 3 convictions under Bronx Indictment 4978 of 91, each for murder in the 2nd degree under the first count of that indictment relating to the death of Shamira Bello. The court imposes an indeterminate sentence, the maximum of which shall be for the term of your natural life. The court imposes a minimum term of 25 years, said term to run consecutively to the sentences you're now doing under New York County Indictment 14598 of 90 and Bronx County Indictment 793 of 89, and the said defendant is committed to the State Department of Correctional Services until released in accordance with the law. for your conviction under the second count relating to the death of Lisa Rodriguez. The court imposes an indeterminate term, the maximum of which shall be for the term of your natural life, and the court imposes a minimum term of 25 years, said term to run consecutively to the sentence imposed today under count 1 of the same indictment, and the said defendant is committed to the State Department of Correctional Services until released in accordance with the law. For your conviction under count 3 of the same indictment relating to the death of Jessica Guzman, the court imposes an indeterminate sentence, the maximum of which shall be for the term of your natural life, and the court imposes a minimum term of 25 years, said term to run consecutively to those sentences already imposed under counts 1 and 2, and the said defendant is committed to the State Department of Correctional Services until released in accordance with the law. Give him the right to appeal.
Alejandro Enriquez.
So that is 75 to life, in this case consecutive to the 5 to 10 you're already doing.
Alejandro Enriquez.
Man, you want to talk about a narcissist. Even after all that, this asshole can't admit that he's the one that did it. Just shocking to me. Coincidences, there are no coincidences in life. You're not going to be tied to 3 people that were killed in the exact same way. Have your freaking hairs on them and also have their, fibers from their clothing in your car vacuum cleaner. Come on, man. So it's off to prison for him and really for the rest of his life. And a very renowned FBI profiler by the name of James Fitzgerald, one of the absolute historic FBI profilers, he does a psychological profile on Alex Enriquez, and I found it to be very interesting. Here's what he said. You tell me what you think. So the first thing he discussed was his core personality traits, and Fitzgerald described Enriquez as a self-centered, psychopathic individual with a constant narcissistic need for power, control, and attention. He lies as a means of self-preservation. He has a very positive perception of himself and uses his superficial charm to fulfill his own ends. He is a psychopath first before anything else. Psychopaths prioritize control above all. They don't want to be controlled. They want to control others, and they'll do anything within their power through lies or manipulation and even through violence to keep that control. He talks about the narcissism, specifically inflated self-view, surrounding himself with people considered inferior, primarily children and teenagers, specifically to feel powerful and superior. So he's basically saying there he couldn't feel that way around adults, so he would surround himself with teenagers and children because he was maybe smarter than some of them. Superficial charm and manipulation. He said he presents as a successful, clean-cut driver who brought kids toys, let them play in his cars, bragged about his dating success, and inserted himself into community searches and visuals for his own victims. And that was to manipulate, find out if the police were on to him, etc. Then he talked about the lying, pathological lying, not random, but strategic for self-preservation. While in custody, he scripted his nephew to call the media, pretending to be the killer, feeding non-public details, and I told you about that. Then he gets into the sexual deviance and victim selection of that profile. Fitzgerald concluded Enriquez was probably incapable of having normal sexual interactions with adult women, which explains his targeting of younger females, who he could dominate and manipulate. All convicted victims were personally known to him through neighborhood or family ties. Suspected victims followed the same pattern. His crimes combined sexual assault, rape with extreme violence, and body disposal in garbage bags near highways or parks. These are signature elements of power control motivated sexual sadist. He carried a .38 pistol and a fake badge, drove a large police-style Lincoln sedan, and posed as an NYPD detective common in offenders who crave authority. He also said he was an organized offender, careful victim selection, planning, and body disposal. He participated in community searches and prayer vigils while secretly probing police methods, even asking about bloodhounds and even attempting to mislead investigators. Thrill of insertion, classic psychopathic insertional behavior, being close to the investigation without being caught gave him additional power and attention. And lack of remorse. This is very important, just like you heard in that victim impact statement. No remorse. He wouldn't even admit doing it. So that's a look at the psychological profile from probably one of the best profiles in history. So in the case of Alex Enriquez, where is he now? Well, he's still incarcerated, obviously, at the Sullivan Correctional Center. This is in Fallburg, New York. He's 65 years old, and to this day, still denies any involvement in these killings. Now, the only incident to really occur inside of prison was very early in his incarceration. It was like 2 years after he was arrested. In 1992, a fellow inmate stabbed him, but unlike his 3 other victims, he got to live through that stabbing. Now, in addition, as I told you from the jump on this episode, he was suspected in other murders, including the double murder of his 13-year-old niece and her 15-year-old friend. Now, their bodies were discovered in black garbage bags, his MO, right, near a park bridge, also his MO. Both teens were strangled, also his MO. In 1989, which was the time when the majority of this was going on, he was never charged in that case, however. Now, also in 1990, a 17-year-old by the name of Annette Rosario, and that's no relation to his wife, just coincidentally the same last name, she went missing and her body was never found, but he was suspected in that case as well. So there you have it. Another 50 Shades of Evil went to New York this week. And I wanted to bring you one that maybe wasn't as high profile these days. It was certainly high profile in the late 80s, early 90s. Look, New York, I could have told you probably 10, 20 different people that are infamous from that particular state. But I wanted to bring you one that you may not be familiar with. Thank you so much for listening. I'll be back next week with another 50 Shades of Evil. Not sure where I'm going to go next, but I still got plenty of states to cover. I think we've done about 8 so far. So I look forward to bringing you more of that. Thank you so much for listening. For commercial-free early releases and more, check us out on Patreon. If you'd like to help support the show, that's patreon.com/Bloody Angola Podcast. And until next time, for Bloody Angola, I'm your host, Jim Chapman. Much love.
I walk a straight line, shackled and chained. Oh, gruesome Gertie is calling my name. There is no mercy in this penitentiary. Just ask the Hill String Gang or Angola